This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well this morning, this beautiful Sunday morning. My voice is still waking up a bit. Got a little bit of a in my throat. Mostly because of the air quality on my side of the world right now. Can't imagine what that's from. Forest fires. But anyway, this too shall pass, as my mother usually says. Hope you're all doing well. Oh, what are we doing today? Oh, Microsoft, right. Microsoft. Oh, a corporation that runs a lot of our lives behind the scenes or otherwise. Yeah, what do they got going on? What do they got going on? When I suddenly turn Mario Italian or something? I don't know. Anyway, who's joining me this morning? This beautiful Sunday morning? Sarah Chapman, McClellan LOL, Keever Dam. And Keever Dam's got the GoFundMe's for us, so let me pin those up real quick. Some Namnyon Nation, Funtime Bats, Noah Asensio, Hi M Steve, Arc210, Liesel7, Mike Savage, Blarg, Nellie Daniels, pardon me. Nellie has a dog in this hunt, as it were. As a woman in tech, I'm excited to hear about how I can learn about diversity. I always am told about how I am bringing diversity into the workplace. Yes, simply by being there. The aura of your chromosomes, I guess, adds to that. So I'm told. Shadowclaw. Let's see. Oopsie. Oops. What is this? Oopsie Drewathing. Did I get that right? I hope so. Renovescio. You're making beef jerky. Oh boy, are you smoking it yourself? Beef jerky. And J2022, good morning to you all. Yes, so we have from Microsoft, very professionally produced video, I'm assuming. And the title of this one is Diversity and Inclusion. Microsoft CDO shares her top learnings from the experts. Now, a CDO is Chief Diversity Officer. It means something else in finance, so don't get confused. But anyway, I don't know what's going on, but I like her haircut. We'll see that in a second. Anyway, this clocks in at just under 30 minutes at 28:26, and it involves on-camera stuff and some looks like Zoom call stuff, so the audio quality may vary segment to segment. But yes, let's find out in one of the biggest corporations on the planet what they are doing to diversify and inclusify their workforce. I'm sure there's nothing either sophistry, whatever, pablum, or potentially questionably legal going on. We'll find out. Mr. Tickle Trunk, good morning. Anybody else I missed in the meantime? I don't think so. And to those of you in the lurking phase or in the future, good morning. And real quick, thank you, Keeper Dam. Their name is pronounced Oops, I Drew a Thing. Oh, I apologize. How about I just call you Drew? Makes everybody easier. Or is that a bad thing? Is that like, is that a name microaggression? I don't know. Anyway. Oops, I Drew a Thing. Good morning. Here we go. I cut out the opening music because maybe copyright. Whoa!
Hello and welcome.
Oh, hello and welcome. I assume you guys can hear that all right. I'll wait a second. Let me know. That is some kind of hair. I tell you what. That is. I wonder how much that haircut cost. Oh, and thank you, Mr. Tickle Trunk. Let me pull this up here as soon as it pops up for the happy, smiley, lovely Dog Cat Fox. Oh, Dog Cat Fox.
Wowie, wow, wow.
And that was a Keever Dam Dog Cat Fox. So thank you, Keever Dam. And thank you, Mr. Tickle Trunk. All right. So everybody hear that okay? Sounds good? All right. And also, I am using my revised microphone settings this morning, so hopefully I sound a little bit better than previous broadcasts, but you guys will have to let me know.
I am Lindsay Ray McIntyre, Chief Diversity Officer for Microsoft. Thanks so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. I am happy to be here. I don't think I've done something specifically on Microsoft in a very long time, so this ought to be educational. And also, this was published just in the last 48 hours, so this is as fresh of information as it gets.
At Microsoft, over the past couple of years, we've had the privilege of learning from some of the world's leading experts and academics on key diversity and inclusion topics. These experts are driving critical work, each in their own way, for communities and organizations around the world.
See, I'm kind of surprised that she is the Chief Diversity Officer. Can you imagine what about her causes me to be surprised, given the trends we've seen in Chief Diversity Officer hiring and such? They're the ones that force me to ask these questions.
As a Chief Diversity Officer, I know this space is always evolving. New conversations, deeper understanding of identity, and greater connections to communities surface every day. Staying on top of this evolution is part of what my team does.
And part of what keeps me employed, because there's never an answer. It's always changing. We always have a long way to go.
To ensure we are always innovating for inclusion. Today, I thought I'd share with you insights from just a few experts we've had the pleasure of learning from.
Excellent.
We hope their perspectives help spark new ways of thinking about diversity and inclusion for your organization.
Oh boy.
Or for your individual learning journey.
Oh, my learning journey. Ooh, I like that. I'm on an individual learning journey, guys. That's what this entire YouTube experiment has been. It's been my individual learning journey. And it never ends.
Collectively, this allows us to create more inclusive culture on our teams, for everyone here at Microsoft, and for our ecosystem.
Our ecosystem? Oh, well, speaking of ecosystem, that's not a very effective segue, but Tailed Feature's in the chat. Fucking me! Everybody say hi to Tailed Feature. Also, check out Tailed Feature's YouTube channels, Tailed Feature and Scottish Feature. If you enjoy travel logs and hiking and beautiful landscapes on Scottish Feature, he does hiking videos as well as other things about Scotland. So go check that out. There you go. I just plugged my friend.
We share more from these and many others on our inclusion journey site at aka.ms/inclusion journey.
AKA sounds vaguely criminal.
Our list of top 5 insights. Let's start with allyship.
Yes, allyship. It's my favorite. It's like friendship, but like more suspicious.
At Microsoft, we connect our growth mindset culture to diversity and inclusion through a unique approach to allyship.
Okay.
We know an ally is not a person's identity, but a set of intentional actions. As we build our awareness in service of being able to better practice allyship, we're going to need to continue learning.
Yeah.
Because we're not always going to get it right.
Right.
Allyship is not a thing we do once in a meeting or weekly on that particular call.
No.
It's a long-term commitment.
Yes.
One that requires self-awareness, a willingness to keep trying,
yes,
even when we make mistakes.
Yes.
To do something well, we have to know what it is and what it isn't.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'm glad we're going to get into definitions and specific examples, right? We're really going to do that this time, right? I feel like an abused spouse or something. It's really going to happen this time, right? Or like a guy at the racetrack. My horse has got to come in sometime. So you're going to give us very defined examples of what you're talking about. I hope so. I mean, sarcasm aside, I honestly do hope so. I can't wait.
So the first key learning I'll share with you is that it's critical to know the difference between effective allyship and ineffective allyship before we act.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, tell me, what is the difference? What is the difference between effective and ineffective allyship? I'm assuming punching somebody in the face is ineffective allyship, and that opening a door for someone is effective allyship. I mean, it's going to be as contrasted as that, right?
Dolly Chugg, psychologist, author, and professor at New York University, has a provocative way of describing what ineffective allyship can look like.
Oh, okay. Provocative.
Dolly, what does ineffective allyship look like,
Yes.
and how can it go wrong?
Yeah. Okay.
I have so many examples of that from my own grappling and learning process.
You're going to give us personal anecdotes? Okay, fine. I'll at this point I'll take anything.
I'd say one pattern is ineffective allyship has a lot of cookie seeking in it. This is a term that activists use to describe the tendency that we all have. It's a very human tendency that we want to be kind of stroked or appreciated or a pat on the back.
Oh, I know that I want to be stroked and appreciated. Sorry, what?
For our good deeds.
Mm-hmm.
I've interviewed a bunch of people for my book, and in one of the interviews, somebody shared with me a story. Rachel Herniak shared a story of after the Orlando Pulse shooting. She woke up, learned the news. As a queer woman, she was absolutely mortified, terrified. And then as the day moved to Sunday evening and she started thinking about going to work the next day, she dreaded it. And it wasn't because she didn't have supportive friends and colleagues at work. It was actually because she imagined there would be a lot of cookie seeking, a lot of people coming in expressing their concern and their mortification, and then telling her about the donations they make to the Trevor Project. Or
Wait. So at this point in the story, nothing has happened to her. She just imagined that people would do a thing. She imagined people would express their grief to her and support and sympathy to her, and also that they made some gesture of charity on behalf of the tragedy and looking for her approval. Her imagining that that's what they were doing, that they were seeking her approval. So her imagination is the problem. Her imagination is ineffective allyship. Okay, well, tell me how this story went. Did that actually happen?
Or the roommate they have that recently came out. In other words, they would be looking for validation from her. That's what the cookie seeking is.
Well, okay, let me ask you a question. Given the way that diversity, equity, and inclusion work has proceeded over the last 6 or 7 years, why would that be so shocking? When the people who qualify as diverse are also elevated as those who are the ones who dictate what is or is not appropriate behavior when it comes to their particular demographic or issue or whatever else, how can you avoid someone looking to someone else for approval? When you're setting the rules and you're the one judging everyone's behavior, actions, and so on, by some, constantly changing metric of what is appropriate, what is allowed, what is cancelable and what isn't. How can you avoid cookie-seeking culture? Right? When you tell, just for example, when you tell straight people or white people or whatever that you can't understand my lived experience, right? You don't share my lived experience. How do you avoid that? And I'm asking honestly. I would love to ask this lady honestly. How do you avoid that effect when you tell anybody who has the incorrect aesthetic that they cannot relate to someone else who has been elevated to a victim class that they will never understand? And yet the person who is in the wrong always wants to do better. Who is the arbiter of correct action, if not the people that you're putting into the victim status? I don't know how you avoid this. I honestly don't. But okay, so this lady imagined that people were going to be cookie seeking when she went back to work.
Rather than seeking to create space for her and centering her. So that's a big mistake we make, is that we begin the lifelong work of...
Did they? No. Did they do that? I mean, setting aside whether or not their behavior is wrong, did her imagination come true? Was she a prophet or not?
Learning and acting as allies, and then we want to be, in that very human way we all have, praised for it.
Okay, that answered nothing. Ineffective allyship is what I imagine people might do to try to make me feel better that I decide is just them going clout chasing. But I've decided that their gestures of support and gestures of charity are just trying to get me to validate them because I'm the center of the universe. And what they really need to do is give me space and center me. What am I listening to here? I'm listening to the same old bag. Okay, so even the experts that Microsoft tunes in on have no active examples and are just talking nonsense. And it's all about microaggressions and personal interpretation. Okay, next.
I love that phrase, cookie seeking.
Now we need Cookie Monster to show up. Cookie, cookie, cookie. Me want cookie.
It forces us to stop and reflect on our own motivations for allyship. When is it for our own purposes versus when is it truly for the benefit of others?
What if the outcome is the same? What if the outcome is the same? What if the $100 I donate to the Trevor Project is just to make me feel good? What if it is that selfish? What if it's just to satisfy my own sense of self-importance? Does the Trevor Project still receive the $100? Would the Trevor Project reject that $100 if my motivation was not pure? You tell me. I don't know. I don't know. If I do something that helps somebody else and it's simply for my gratification, but that person is still helped, should I just not help anymore? Is that help going to be rejected? I mean, possibly so, given the inquisition we have going on right now about motives and mindsets and are you thinking correctly?
Allyship starts with the work to deepen our own individual awareness. But our vision for change is...
Wait. If my motivation is to deepen my own individual awareness, isn't that a self-serving motivation? This gets really philosophical. Is there anything that we do in life that is not in some way, shape, or form self-serving? If I get up in the morning and brush my teeth, aren't I brushing my teeth to make sure my teeth don't fall out, that I have nice breath when I'm interacting with other people? When I go to work, am I going to work for anybody else, or am I going to work to satisfy me needing to pay my bills? Is there anything that is a completely selfless act? You know, I mean, short of the, I always come back to the jumping on a live grenade, like an act that is completely selfless, that does me no good, but does help others. All right. But okay, my individual journey, awareness, development, everything else, somehow that isn't a selfish motivator, and that's okay. All right, I'm going to back up a little bit because I cut her off.
I love that phrase, cookie seeking. It forces us to stop and reflect on our own motivations for allyship.
Uh-huh.
When is it for our own purposes versus when is it truly for the benefit of others?
This is coming from a corporation. When is it for our own purposes? What is the outlying goal of a corporation specifically?
Allyship starts with the work to deepen our own individual awareness.
Uh-huh.
But our vision for change has got to be even bigger than that.
Okay.
Our next topic is systemic change.
Well, wait. No, okay, I was joking before, and now it's not a joke. You were going to tell us the differences between effective and ineffective allyship. You had one person give someone's imagination as an example of the bad version, but you didn't give any contrasting evidence elsewhere. Oh, okay. All right. Well, Microsoft, for all your billions and billions of dollars, you can't afford to do any better right now than a $20 webcam on YouTube and somebody sitting in their office. I'm not kidding. It's thank you, Mr. Tickle Trunk. Bad allyship is not saying something, while cookie seeking is saying something which is also bad allyship. Congratulations, you are always wrong. Yes. Yes, there's no correct way of acting. We always have to leave room to be able to criticize someone that they're not doing it right. Because if they ended up doing it right, if there's actually a provable method for doing it right, we might reach the end of our ability to complain and be victims and somehow not being treated correctly. There's never a right way. Everything always has to be slightly flawed, and we will never give you a definition. A definition would mean an end to an argument. We can't have that. Okay, anyway, next topic.
As those who envision and create the future of technology, it's in our shared interest to challenge our own assumptions and systemic status quo on our teams and inside our organizations.
Okay.
By asking ourselves, how can we do things differently?
Well, it'd have to be understanding what we're doing right now. So could you give us definitions of ineffective allyship so I can know how to improve it in the future? Okay, well, define the norm and then define the kind of change you want to see. And then we can talk about what steps would need to be taken to get from point A to point B. That was actually poetic. Okay, are we going to do that?
To create an opening, invite more perspectives and voices into spaces where we're innovating.
Okay.
The second learning I'll share is that it takes honest reflection on the individual level and the organizational level to drive systemic change.
Yes, we have talked about self-reflective practices on this channel before. So, all right, let's honestly reflect on what you're talking about. What does that look like? Give me an example, or is it more imagination?
Chase Strangio, a lawyer with the ACLU and LGBTQIA+ rights activist, challenges us to reflect on our own biases that can influence both our behaviors and the policies and practices we create.
Okay.
We have to break down the assumptions of how workplaces and institutions are organized.
Okay, let's break that down. Break it down for me.
Whether that's in terms of thinking about, well,
I'm sorry. The name tag or the label tag on his shirt. Are you kidding me? Okay. New game. Serious or performance art? Holy cats. All right, let's start from the top on that one. Let's start from the top. Good gravy.
We have to break down the assumptions of how workplaces and institutions are organized. Whether that's in terms of thinking about, well, who takes on caretaking labor in the home and how is that implicated in the workplace?
Ooh, caretaking labor in the home. I did a TEDx on that not too long ago. It had to deal with, the age of caretakers in Britain, but small world. Okay. Caretakers in the home and how that translates over to the workplace. That seems like a very niche consideration. What does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with diversity?
Who takes on caretaking labor in the workplace and how is that organized? Who's cleaning up after meetings? Who's, making space for others to speak in meetings?
Cleaning up, I don't know, I don't know. What are you talking about?
There's all sorts of ways in which the workplace has been constituted in the United States and around the world that has benefited cisgender, heterosexual white men.
Oh, okay. So what would you suggest be done to change that?
To the exclusion of and pushing people all the way out of the workplace. And so if we want to be more inclusive, we have to challenge all of our practices, whether those are family leave practices, practices around restrooms.
Family leave practices. Those don't affect just people in general. Practices around restrooms. Like what? What are you suggesting?
Practices around access to healthcare.
Like what? What practices need to be revised, updated, reformed? Like, if what is a current standard practice that is problematic, and what would be the correct revision to it?
Practices around the language that we use when we're interviewing people.
What?
Do we assume their pronouns? Do we assume that they use the name that's the name on their legal documentation?
Oh, yeah, because it's never been the case that you walk into a thing and someone sees that someone's name on a resume is Matthew and the guy says, you prefer Matt or Matthew? You've never heard that before. That's never just sort of like common parlance in people trying to understand one another. You like Liz or Elizabeth, whichever. And then the person says, oh, whatever you like, or I like Liz, or whatever. That's never happened before. Oh, yeah, the language we're using. Like, a name on your legal document. Like, why? Okay, what are you suggesting in the alternative?
Do we assume the pronouns and sex of their partner?
What? Yes, we do. Unless or until it becomes a legal issue, yes, we do. If I look at you, and despite everything that you might be doing otherwise, I can say, that's a man, and I'm probably going to refer to you as such. We are, as Christopher Hitchens calls us, we are pattern-seeking mammals. We see something, we compare it to what we understand about the world generally, and we move forward. Unless or until we're given evidence to the contrary. Evidence to the contrary. So what are you asking to have happen?
Do we assume that they are not caring for children or family members at home?
How would I know that? If two people walk into a room and sit down, do I know that they're a married couple? Do I know they have children? No, you know how I find out these things? By talking to them, right? If I really care, if it matters if they have children or not. What?
I think in order to sort of maximize the capaciousness that we all hold and have our workplaces be the most efficient, be the most profitable, be the most exciting.
The most efficient, most profitable, and exciting matters about whether or not I assume someone's pronouns or not? What? I know I'm going to ask this over and over again. What are you talking about? What does any of this have to do with anything? What are you suggesting be done? Cite a problem and offer a solution. Give a compare and a contrast between what is current and what you want to see and what you would suggest be done to achieve that goal. And then I can evaluate what you're talking about. But just throwing out, we have to practice about healthcare, practice is about this, practice is about that. You're saying nothing. Nothing.
We have to sort of break down all of the structural and interpersonal assumptions about gender that we are bringing.
Now, you're a lawyer, obviously, and there are frameworks that you bring in terms of making those challenges in a workplace such as, say, at Microsoft or any other company. What would be your best advice in terms of bringing those challenges to a conversation?
Bringing those challenges to a conversation? What? No. The question is, what changes do you want to see? Give me an example. I don't understand what you're talking about by just opening the door to more nonsense.
I mean, I really, for me, it's about having the conversation.
Can you give us a hypothetical conversation? Somebody comes up and says X and you say Y in response because this is the subject at hand? Is it a courageous conversation? Is Glenn Singleton involved by any chance?
It's about getting to know people. I talk a lot about how when I interviewed at my current job at the ACLU, I later learned that people in my interview assumed that I wouldn't be taken seriously by a judge or that I wouldn't be able to thrive in the environment because I sort of transcended the binary of maleness and femaleness, which can...
No, you really haven't. You are a male. You're a male who's affecting... I mean, seriously, your tag, your demographic tag that you wear on... I mean, talking about wearing it on your sleeve. I wouldn't take you seriously as a lawyer. I don't take you seriously now. You come across as a caricature. I mean, you're practically asking to not be taken seriously. And especially, and even if I had no visual notion of you, listening to your answer to a question, listening to how you've described what you're talking about, I wouldn't take you seriously, because you're not talking like a serious person. You're talking like somebody who's filling up the air with words, trying to sound like you're saying something but saying nothing. And maybe that's just an artifact of being a lawyer. I don't know. But all around, the entire picture of you, what you have to say, your ideas, your appearance, everything else, I don't take you seriously. I can't until you say something that is serious.
And make people uncomfortable. But if we assume that people aren't going to be able to enter and improve our workspaces, then we're going to push out incredible talent.
I don't assume anything until I hear what you have to say. And so far, you have not said anything that is actionable. You have talked in high-minded, broad words and subjects and topics without any definition. Literally no definition. And here's the thing. Everything that you've said, at least in content, is effectively no different than I've heard from dozens and dozens and dozens of other people who all look different and who all sound different and who all come from different parts of working industries. So you are effectively no different on a functional / mechanical level than dozens and dozens and dozens of other people who have fed me nothing but nonsense over the last 6 years. So I guess you're in good company in that sense. I don't know.
And so I think having conversations with people and sort of asking people sort of, why is it that you feel most comfortable with this type of candidate? Why is it that you're afraid to have someone in the workplace who's going to challenge, the structure of the layout, whether it's the bathrooms, whether it's the healthcare plan, whether it's the time of day that someone has to leave to get their kids?
I think my first concern should be, in hiring someone for a job, is do they possess the qualifications and experience necessary to fulfill the needs of the position? That would be my first concern. Everything else after that is conceivably negotiable, granted that they fulfill that first concern. Okay. But maybe that's just me.
These are all conversations that we have to have with each other. And I think the more people that you bring in with direct experience, living at the sort of cross lines of systemic oppression.
Maybe I don't care about your systemic oppression outside of the workplace. Maybe I only care about the workplace, and your personal life is just that. It is not my business. And if your personal life, beyond the unavoidable things such as kids and personal health and things, if your personal life is going to become a hindrance to you doing your job, well, then maybe I'll have to take that into consideration when your performance review comes around. I don't know. Are you kidding me? We have the sex bot back. Okay. Let's see. You see, I have, when I click on this thing, I don't know if you guys see it down here. Yeah. When I click on this thing, it says unhide user on this channel, which indicates to me that this user is already hidden on this channel, but somehow it keeps coming back. Okay, well, Mr. Tickle Trunk did it. Okay, so unless they keep opening up multiple YouTube accounts with the same name, I suppose that's possible. We have hidden and removed and flagged this person or this bot a zillion times. So hopefully we won't see that again today. Anyway, back to our speaker.
The more that you are going to be able to have those conversations at all levels of leadership. If everyone who is, dissimilar to the people who are at the top of any hierarchy is completely pushed out of an institution, that institution will never change, and we will never be able to see the type of progress that we need.
Dissimilar. You're talking about aesthetics. You're talking about aesthetics almost entirely. You're not talking about, like, if everybody in the company knows their job and does their job well, more likely than not, they won't be pushed out. I mean, that's what you're supposedly looking for. But you want to populate the workforce with people who look different. That's your first priority. not work experience, not excellence in product. No, you have to have someone there who, quote unquote, is different. Okay, well, again, we've had our second expert now, and I come away knowing just as much as I did before they started talking. Nothing.
Have we considered, why is it that we feel most comfortable with this particular type of candidate?
Because they possess the relevant work experience in order to fulfill the position. They exude a type of professionalism that is often not seen anymore because everybody wants to integrate their personal lives into their cubicle. I don't know why.
Chase does a great job of challenging us to get out of our comfort zones.
No, he didn't. He didn't do anything of the sort. Okay, I think I see your problem. I think you see your problem. You are elevating people to a status of desirability and excellence based on aesthetics alone and rhetoric. Not quality, not credentials, just because, quote unquote, they're different. And that alone. So, yeah, Punky Brewster walks in the room, and obviously Punky Brewster is the smartest person in the room because Punky Brewster looks different than everybody else. She's wearing mismatched socks. She's got multiple colored barrettes in her hair. Nobody else in the room has that. What does she know that we don't? It's the ooh sparkly thing. Like Jeremy from Secrets of Nim. Ooh sparkly.
And to ask ourselves, are we doing what is easy? Or are we doing what is right?
Oh, now it's a moral question. Oh, okay. I thought you were a corporation. Does Microsoft often ask itself, are we doing the easy thing or are we doing the right thing in its business practices? Really? Okay, well, what is the right thing to do here? Give me a hiring practice. Give me a hiring rule. All right? If you're looking for certain things in certain candidates before you hire them, what are you looking for? It's obviously not merit, right? So are you going to come out and tell us that you're looking for people who are different? And, follow-up question, do any of those differences that you're looking for when making a hiring decision fall within the categories listed as illegal to consider in Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964? You tell me.
It is a question that can help us move beyond the binary in our thinking about gender in the workplace and can help us think about employee experience differently for all.
Okay, so you are considering gender as a factor in your hiring decisions, however you define it. Is that what you're telling me? That's what it sounds like you're telling me. Okay.
Our next topic is about embracing identity. Our family identities intersect powerfully with all of our other identities.
I have one identity. It is my name. There are various elements of my personality, interests, and elsewise that might make up the uniqueness of me, but they are not in and of themselves identities. My loving of comic books is not an identity. The fact that I like to eat goldfish crackers, not the actual fish, is not an identity. It might be a personality quirk. You know, I might do something out of a neurotic need for something, but it's not an identity. But okay.
And we may not think about family identity as something to prioritize for inclusion. But in the ways that our society is evolving, embracing families in all forms can help every employee thrive.
Okay, so you're talking about 2 dads, 2 moms, whatever, that kind of thing, right? A rainbow family where you've got like adopted kids that don't necessarily look like their parents, that kind of thing. Yeah, no, that's never been brought up before. It's never been discussed. It's never been a topic of conversation. Only now has it come up.
So the third key learning I want to share with you is that when employees don't have to hide parts of their identity at work, they can thrive individually and collectively.
Here's a question. When do those quote-unquote parts of their identity actually become relevant to the workplace? If they're not relevant to the workplace, Maybe they should be otherwise ignored and moved past because they have nothing to do with the job. Have you ever heard of the benefits, both to the workplace and to the employee, of professional distance?
I want to share just some of the transformative thinking from Rebecca Walker, best-selling author, producer, and activist.
Oh.
She speaks to how organizations can dismantle non-inclusive systems.
Non-inclusive systems. Okay, I cannot wait to hear about a non-inclusive system and how you dismantle that. I can't wait to hear an example of a non-inclusive system. I mean, I'm sure there are some out there. For the benefit of the argument, I'll assume they are there. Tell me about one. Just one. One.
And how we can all create more expansive ways to better support the full spectrum of families.
Okay.
I have been asking the question, what is a family, in a very lived, direct way.
What is a woman?
For many, many years, since my birth.
Okay.
And so, you know, that experience caused me to ask deep questions. What does it mean to be a family?
Do you need more than one copy of this book? Is this your book? Women Talk Money and Women Talk Money. Is that her book? I'm going to assume that's her book. Or she's just a really big fan of that book. You know, sort of like how people keep buying copies of Catcher in the Rye reflexively. I've heard that has happened before.
You know, what does it mean to be a part of a family that is not accepted as a normal family in this culture? How can I use my voice and my sensibility and my platform, my access, to broaden our understanding of what families are, what they do, how they identify, to make space for those voices. So that was the primal kind of urge, the initial urge. And then also I was seeing around me in my cohort so many different kinds of families. You know,
your cohort. It sounds so impersonal. It sounds so cold and clinical, doesn't it? You got a lady talking about families and interconnections between people, and she refers to other people as her cohort. I don't know. It's just me. But okay, you're seeing people around you and families that look different one to another and operate differently. And of course, we've never seen this before in the course of all of human history, and only now is it suddenly a revelation. Yeah, okay, and? You know,
happening. One of my dear friends had a family member who was incarcerated. Another dear friend,
not cohort, dear friend, okay,
decided to give his sperm to his best friend so that she could have a child, even though he didn't want to be a traditional father to that child.
And?
You know, I thought a lot about single mothers by choice.
How about single fathers by choice? How about single mothers not by choice? Single fathers not by choice. Okay.
You know, women who had decided they were not going to wait for someone to come and sort of sweep them off their feet and have a child, that they were going to really actively pursue their dream of having a child.
What about single fathers where the mother abandoned them? Right? Or single fathers where their partner died, right? You know, or like the mom was going to give up the kid or something and the dad said no. I mean, it's probably not nearly as often as the other side of the equation, but why just women? Are you not examining your own inherent biases by any chance?
I was struck by this incredible evolution in our definition of what it means to be a family.
What can be done at the individual, at the organizational level, to make teams and companies more inclusive of all families? Like you said, to not have the next so-and-so, but the new, original, emerging voices that are going to move our companies forward.
What are you talking about? The next so-and-so. If I come to work and I do my job, what does my family have to do with it? That's my question. What does my family have to do with it? Okay, is it bring your kid to work day? Well, if I don't have kids, I can't do it. If I have a kid, I can. And then what? I need somebody to explain. I need the experts here to explain to me of what purpose is bringing my family into the workplace. When does my workplace require me to bring my personal life into the workplace? My family life. When do they need to know? Aside from saying maybe medical considerations. Okay, for insurance purposes, tax purposes. Okay, I'll give you that. If they need to know how many dependents I have, am I married? Am I single? Am I that kind of, okay, all right, I'll give you that. On a functional HR level, they do need to know that information. All right. But outside of that, what does it have to do with anything? Okay. What does the makeup of my family have to do with anything? What does the appearance of my family have to do with anything? I need that question answered. I know I'm not going to get it answered, but let me back up and get back to our moderator's bizarre question.
The organizational level to make teams and companies more inclusive of all families. Like you said, to not have the next so-and-so, but the new, original, emerging voices that are going to move our companies forward.
Well, obviously, it's very important that recruitment, that when the company is thinking about bringing in new voices at every level, that these are top of mind concerns.
These are top of mind concerns. So when I'm hiring someone, I need to take into consideration the composition of their family before I decide if they get the job. Is that what you mean? Because that's what it sounds like you mean. That's a new one.
So hiring, recruitment, in-house network, in-house development of people who are coming from different backgrounds, family backgrounds, cultural backgrounds.
So I need to evaluate someone's cultural background when considering them for a position in the company? That's your advice. Okay, well, I would love to see that in action. And then I'd love to see somebody call a civil rights attorney.
Ideological backgrounds. How do we do that?
I don't know. How do you hire for ideological background in a company at Microsoft, elsewise? I please, I want to know.
I think that's really, really important. I think that conversations like this are critical.
What?
The idea of educating the community and really creating space for people to learn about different points of view, then thinking about how to put those into action systemically. This is very, very important work,
What you haven't described anything. What are you talking about? Important work? She asked a nonsensical question, and I guess accordingly you provided a nonsensical answer that implicated a whole lot of very, very questionably legal policies for a company to employ when hiring people. I mean, that's the most interesting thing I've heard so far. You want to evaluate a candidate on their ideological beliefs? Would that include religion by any chance? What?
So obviously when we think about the corporate, you've got the inside, you've got the corporate culture where people show up every day. So that's the place where you want to be changing the language, changing the tone, making people feel more and more comfortable showing up as who they are.
Showing up as who they are. Okay, well, if I'm just showing up as who I am, but you also have filters on who you're allowing into the workforce based on cultural background, ideology, and family makeup. Well, am I showing up as who I am, or am I showing up as who you've deemed appropriate to be in the workplace based on aesthetics and belief systems? If I show up as who I am, but it falls outside those requirements you've listed, what happens to me then? But I still do the job, right? I mean, if I'm doing my job, I come to work every day on time, I do the work that's expected of me, and I leave on time every day and repeat every 5 days during the course of the week. What do you care about my ideology? What business is it of yours? Thank you, Ms. Tickletrunk. Bad allyship is not saying something while cookies. Oh, sorry. My chat was stuck 17 miles above. It was not Mr. Tickletrunk. Sorry. Okay, the StreamYard chat froze up. I apologize. Christopher Fluette. Thank you, Christopher. Apologies for that. Instead of worrying about family status and pronouns, can we just get someone to make an update that doesn't take half a day? That happened to a friend of mine just the other day. Like in the middle of us talking, her computer like suddenly said, it's time for an update. And it like sat there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours or something. Because it was a laptop and it didn't have, the processing power, the download speed of something else. And yeah, how are pronouns going to fix Microsoft updates? Or Windows bugs? Okay, go on with your whatever you were talking about.
Because if they cannot show up as who they are, acknowledging, listen, this kid is sick, my mother is in the hospital, my wife, my husband, my non-binary partner.
My what? Okay, if I come into the workplace and I say, I have a family emergency, my partner is sick and I need to leave. Or I come in and I say, my child broke her leg, I need to leave. What does it matter? I mean, setting aside all of the considerations, if my child is actually a boy, but I'm calling him or her, or if my partner happens to be the same sex as me, or whatever, what does any of that matter? What business is it of the company to know the minute details of my family makeup? Okay.
The language, changing the tone, making people feel more and more comfortable showing up as who they are. Because if they cannot show up as who they are, acknowledging, listen, this kid is sick, my mother is in the hospital, my wife, my husband, my non-binary partner.
Yeah, because that's what I'd say. If I love someone, that's how I'm going to classify them. I'm going to come in and say, hey, boss, I got to leave. My non-binary partner is sick. Not my boyfriend, not my girlfriend, not my partner, not my spouse, not my wife, not my husband, just so you know, my non-binary. Come on. Not that I don't believe that people wouldn't say that these days to make themselves feel all special or something, or to try to gain some kind of victimization points, but all the same, like, seriously, are you this is the level of advice you have for corporations? This is your insight as an expert? All right.
Is undergoing surgery for this, is being, my kid's having a crisis in school because they have a learning difference.
What is that the business of the business? I have a family emergency. Privacy. I don't have to tell you the intricacies of it. I'm not obligated to give my boss any more information than I have, except perhaps, if they ask for some kind of doctor's note or some evidence of it just for the records. What? Seriously? This is your big concern? Okay.
My great whoever is struggling with mental health issue because we are not respecting neurodiversity in the way that we should.
Yeah, I'm sure that's how most conversations go. Hey, boss, I need to go because my family member is experiencing a mental health crisis because our society is not addressing neurodiversity the way that it should. And your boss is like, okay, well, mark down your sick time.
These are the kinds of things people need to be able to say in the workplace.
Why?
Right? They need to just be able to say it.
Okay, and then what? And then what happens? What changes? I'm going to give you a TMI situation where I just give you a total and absolute data dump of my personal life and intricate details to my boss, to my coworkers, and on and on and on. Of what benefit is that? How does that improve employee performance? How does that improve retention? How does that improve work efficiency? What does any of that have to do with anything?
This is what's really going on for me. And so companies need to do whatever they can internally to do that. So obviously, there are things like, extended paid parental leave that we need to be thinking about.
What does that have to do with the makeup or intricacies of my family? If I have a family, if I have children, if I have a wife, a spouse, whatever, what matters? The individual little nuances of it.
Obviously, flex time for parents.
If I have kids, what does it matter what they look like or what I do in the bedroom on my free time?
Obviously, one of my greatest wishes is on-site daycare for children.
Okay, and you know what? What does that have to do with someone's ideology, cultural background, or the specificity of their partnership pronouns? If they have kids who need to be looked after during the course of the workday, the end.
These are things that have been in the conversation for a very long time.
Yes, they have been. They have nothing to do with all of this new age stuff that you keep talking about. They are very basic. Do you have a spouse? Do you have children? Do you have dependents of some kind or another, whether they're your own parents or otherwise? These things have been talked about, discussed, and mechanisms have been put into place in law and practice to accommodate them to the most reasonable degree. What are you asking to have happen?
I also think in terms of asking people what they really need to get more support for their families, I think about possibly providing legal advice to team members who may be having difficulties in different realms. It could be an incarcerated spouse. It could be someone who's trying to seek asylum from another country. It could be someone who needs immigration support, whose child has DACA, and they don't know what's going to happen.
If their child has DACA, then you are employing an illegal immigrant. I mean, that might be your first problem right there. How are you handling that one? But okay.
What are the things that people actually need to have healthy families, and what can the company provide?
I don't know. Whatever is within the law, first and foremost, and thereafter, anything that they choose to do. Okay.
Many of us have had to come to terms these last couple of years with an important truth.
Oh.
No matter how hard we might try,
yeah,
we can't leave parts of ourselves at the door when we come to work each day.
Well, then that is your personal problem and lack of professionalism. I come to work to do my job. I don't bring my personal life into work unless it is something that is decidedly unavoidable. A sick family member, a death in the family, an injury of some kind that I attained outside the workplace, something like that. Otherwise, I come to work to do my job. I don't come to work as a social club. I don't come to work as a therapy session. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just a dying breed. I don't know. But if you can't do that, if you lack the capacity to put a line between your personal life and your professional life, that is a you problem, which also invariably will become a work problem. Do you want your personal life that has nothing to do with your work life to become the company's problem? Because if it does, there's a real quick way for you out the door over someone else who can retain their personal life from their professional life. What does professionalism mean to you? That's what I would ask our speaker here. What does it mean to be a professional? What does the concept of professional distance mean to you?
Then why would we expect our colleagues and employees to do so?
Okay, let's back up because I cut her off mid philosophizing. Come on.
Many of us have had to come to terms these last couple of years with an important truth. No matter how hard we might try, We can't leave parts of ourselves at the door when we come to work each day. Then why would we expect our colleagues and employees to do so? Rebecca breaks open some of the traditional thinking about what a family is, to push us to be even more thoughtful about how we include everyone in our workplace.
She didn't push any boundaries about anything that hasn't been discussed for the last 50 years about the changing nature of the family, aesthetically speaking, in this country. Nothing. What she did implicate, what she did break down, the idea of what you should be hiring people on the basis of. Apparently it's family makeup, cultural background, and ideology. Strangely, none of which have anything to do with work experience or skill. But this is the person you're elevating as an expert in your field as the Chief Diversity Officer? Okay. It's a bold strategy. Let's see how that works out for you.
Many people are quick to name a community or an identity that they aren't a member of, but that they feel they deeply understand. We strive to get there.
Yeah, like I'm not a Doctor Who fan, right? I mean, I watched the 10th Doctor, mostly David Tennant, but I cannot call myself a diehard Doctor Who fan. However, I can empathize with Doctor Who fans as to what's happening to their beloved characters in IP, because that same thing has been happening to me with Star Wars and Marvel for the last several years. So yeah, I can name several communities that I don't have really anything to do with, but I can still empathize with. It's possible because I can see similarities between these things. You know, I can compare one to the other and see the connections. Oh, sorry, what were you talking about?
Either through intentional proximity or building individual empathy. These are important steps, of course. But we also have to have accountability to broaden our awareness about the collective global histories of communities outside of our own. Only then can we connect to the realities of inequality.
Okay, well, I am dying to know, because I hear this all the time, holding someone accountable. What does accountability look like? If I stray outside the lines of the dictated behavior and wordplay and everything else, what happens? How do you hold me accountable?
In the systems we create and the impact they have on others. This is the fourth key learning I want to share.
Okay.
A true ally commits to learning about the historical, social, and cultural context of a community we strive to support.
Right, because anyone that I observe and assume to belong to a particular community all share the same historical, social, and cultural context. Every quote-unquote community is a monolith. And once I understand what I've been told represents a quote-unquote community, then I don't have to ask any questions about what the state of that person is, their personal history, their personal struggles, their personal achievements, because I already know it all just by looking at them. And that's how I'm a true ally, by assuming to know the nature of someone based on what I see. Right?
Dr. G. Christina Mora, professor at UC Berkeley, explains why understanding these complex and nuanced global histories is integral to creating workplace cultures inclusive of Hispanic and Latinx communities.
Hey, how about instead of understanding the global history of communities, I meet an individual? How about instead of assuming to know the nature of someone based on their ethnicity, I actually talk to the person? Because strangely enough, and I don't know if you know this, everyone does not necessarily fall into such easy categorization. Unless, of course, you're a racist.
How can we be more inclusive of the Hispanic and Latinx communities from a global point of view as opposed to just merely from the United States?
Well, how about first admitting that Latinx is a nonsense term that not even the Latino populations of this planet either understand or accept? How about that? You've already lost the plot before you've even gotten out of the gate with that one.
Latin American migration to the United States is not by accident.
No, it's very intentional. People cross the border very intentionally. It's very intentional. You know, either by doing it legally or illegally. If someone is coming to this country and crossing the border, it's not an accident. They're not like just stumbling, like stepping on a banana peel and slipping across the border. No, it's very intentional.
It is linked to, centuries of a specific relationship between the United States and countries south of the U.S.-Mexico border. It
mostly dealing with economic disparities, but yeah.
It is linked to a history of global inequality. It is linked to wars. It is linked to, global trends. Latin American migration, even now, that you see present here in the United States, is also linked to global climate crises.
Global climate crises. Okay. It's not dealing mostly with economics. People looking to make more money than they're getting in their other countries. It's not dealing with other countries being totally broken and corrupt and effectively terrible for their people and them having nowhere to go and becoming desperate. Right? No, it's the climate. It's not the governments of those countries not being able to create a country that is sustainable for its own populations. And who runs those countries? Yeah, okay.
Right? Folks leaving Nicaragua after Hurricane Mitch. Folks leaving Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria.
Yeah, well, those are one-off events that are not constants. Okay, natural disasters, people seeking asylum as refugees from natural disasters, that's a whole other category. That does not make up the majority of the migration from the South American countries and Mexico into America. Okay, let's talk about the stuff that isn't so easily understood.
Right. And sort of understanding that fundamentally there has been an unequal relationship between the U.S. and the rest of the Americas.
Yeah, because the rest of the Americas are broken and corrupt by and large. And whose responsibility is it to make a country work well for its citizens? The governments of those countries. You're right. This isn't an accident. If you're going to place blame, look at the people running the countries, not climate change, not a hurricane.
With the U.S. holding much more of the wealth and opportunities here. When you have this sort of system.
It's not. Why do we hold more opportunities and wealth in this country? Because we are better run, strangely enough, than the countries south of the border. How about you reform the governments running the countries south of the border before you start saying like, oh, well, America's got all the good stuff. So obviously people, yeah, there's a way to try to solve that, to try to mitigate that. Are you going to talk about that?
Right. It is not just, because folks one day decided that they were going to wake up and go. It's because life in their homeland often became untenable.
Yeah, but it's not from hurricanes. There are other systemic problems in those countries that need to be addressed. And they're not being addressed. And instead, people are running away.
Right. Either by global climate, by war, by lots of other aspects.
How about governmental malfeasance? Are you going to bring up the people in charge of the countries themselves? War? Climate change? How about, are you going to actually blame the countries for their own well-being?
That have linked the Americas to the U.S. situation. And so I think keeping that in mind, that these aren't just separate foreign countries, that these are countries whose, economic and political and social conditions are linked to the way the U.S. has also developed.
Wait, no. It's the U.S.'s fault. These aren't individual countries. They're one big monolith of poor us, and it's the U.S.'s fault because they're so much more successful. Really? You're passing. That is some major passing of the buck there, lady. That is something else. That is epic. That is absolutely epic.
Returning back to the workplace.
Yeah, let's get away from the situation where she's saying absolute nonsense.
What are some ways that employees of this community may be excluded in their professional lives?
This community. You mean anyone from south of the U.S. border? We're not even talking about individual countries now. We're just talking about an entire, polyglot of ethnicities. But okay, anybody in this quote-unquote community, because they're all one. Do you understand how racist you are sounding right now?
Yeah, I mean, one thing to think about is if you have this sense of not belonging and certain barriers, everything from, outdated migration laws to even the takeover of the U.S. Southwest, right? Even when we're talking, however historically you want to go, we see moments in which there are structures to social mobility, right? Barriers to social mobility.
What are you talking about?
If we're just talking about the fact that if you look at California.
Okay, let's look at California.
And if you look at where Latinx children are more likely to be in school, it's in the sort of schools that lack, proper resources, right?
If you say so, except that more money is spent on Black and Latino children in California, student per student, than any other racial demographic. But okay.
Right, in under-resourced schools, right? So and this is not new.
What does this have to do with the workplace? What are you talking about? He asked you about look at the look on that guy's face. He's like, what are you talking about? The workplace, an employee. What are you talking about?
This is a continuous turnover.
And you're laughing about it. Why are you smiling? Why are you both smiling? Latino children are being underserved in the California educational system, according to you, and you're smiling and laughing about it. It's just cognitive dissonance out the wazoo here.
All right. So if we understand that, then...
If we understand that, well, if you say so...
We can probably then guess...
We can probably then guess...
That our ideas of who a professional is, our understandings of who is a computer programmer, who is a doctor, who is a dentist, who is a lawyer.
No, my understanding of a professional is someone who knows their business and focuses on getting their work done. That's my definition. You see what happens when I do that? If that is my focus, then it doesn't matter what they look like or where they come from or their accent or what their family looks like. I'm valuing their merit as an employee, as a professional, first and foremost above anything else, and setting aside anything that is irrelevant. Imagine such a world. Could you? I'd like to. I try to.
Are probably not going to include a sort of stereotype of Latinos.
Why? If I'm focused on their skill, ability, and professionalism, what does anything else matter?
Right. And so that's really hard. So what you'll see...
No, you're assuming the worst of people. You are assuming that everybody else is racist first and foremost. Which, if you think about it, makes you a little bit racist. Okay, keep going.
Mainly in the workplace is when Latinos are in these professional settings, they're much more likely to be an extreme minority, right?
If you say so. Okay, so there's only one Latino computer programmer in the company, however big the company is, all right? And then?
And so thinking about that experience, what is it like to not be represented?
Well, here's the thing. I hate to tell you this. People are not representative of anyone other than themselves unless they are elected to a particular position. Represented. If I care about your workability, your professionalism, your timeliness to the job, your quote unquote representation doesn't matter. I don't know what to tell you.
What is it like to feel as you're the only one?
What is it like to feel out of place in a place? Gosh, I've never experienced that at all. It's never happened to me. When I've gone to school and been the four eyes in the class, when I've gone to a place and been the absolute new guy and known no one at all, trying to fit in with people. No one on the planet has ever experienced that if you don't have a particular skin color or you don't represent a particular demographic. It's not a common human experience at all. No. It's just some alien experience that no one else has had before. Can you imagine, if you will, that I was out of place, did not belong, didn't know anybody, felt excluded in a room full of white people? Because it happened to me a lot. I know that sounds impossible to you. I mean, I can only assume it sounds impossible to you because you're divvying everybody up on racial boundaries. And obviously, if you see someone of the same race, you have a connection with them. You're represented because every person who looks like you is exactly like you and somehow knows you, and you're all in the same club together. That's how apparently you think. Good for you.
What is it like to feel lonely in these places?
Yes.
And if workplaces can engage and think about how do we structure belonging for extreme minorities? How do we structure a sense of belonging for those for whom, are often not, seen as folks that belong here, folks that have a right to be here, folks that have earned, the opportunity where they are.
Well, I don't know. Have they earned the opportunity where they are? Did they follow all the laws to become a resident or a citizen? But setting that aside, okay, what does that look like? If a company is going to set up a structure of belonging and inclusion for an extreme minority, if there's one person in the company that looks a particular way, what is the company going to do to force inclusion? What does that look like? How does that process work? The company identifies, hey, you're the only one of your kind in the company. Here's how we're going to make you feel better. What does that look like? I want to know. I am dying to know how that initiative works in a company, or how our speaker here would suggest that work. Is she going to do that? Is she going to describe that process? I'm betting on no.
And I think that's important. I think often we think of workplaces as just places of performance, places where we go in, we do our work, and we go home. But oftentimes, workplaces are places that give us value.
Yeah, it's called a paycheck.
Give us identity.
It might be a title.
They give us our friendship networks. They give us so much more than just the paycheck.
You shouldn't expect that in the workplace. You go to work to make money to pay your bills. That is as much as you should expect to get out of a job. If you can or do make it something more than that, good for you. But
what is it like then to have a place that can, be of value to us, but yet also not be completely inclusive of us? And I think understanding that, and when you really get that, that's when you can open up an honest and authentic conversation of how do we sort of extend the olive branch? How do we make these communities fully integrated?
Yes, how? How do you do that? What are you suggesting? Details. You're the expert here. I'm assuming you are advising companies on how to proceed with these situations. What is done to include the extreme minority into the workplace culture? What are you suggesting be done? Literally. Policies, practices, procedures. What are you talking about?
Into our organization.
Oh my God.
We cannot ignore the past if we want to improve the present.
Uh-huh.
We can't minimize the global in our attempt to address the local.
We can't ignore the past. Hey, how about we talk about valuing people on the basis of appearance? Let's talk about that past. Let's talk about that relatively recent past. Say, I don't know, the mid to late 1960s. How about that? How about we talk about that first and foremost? Putting a value putting on a pedestal people on the basis of what they look like, or who they sleep with, or what they say that they are, ahead of personal merit, the content of character. How do we talk about that past? No? Didn't think so.
Dr. Moore gave us some powerful examples of how a broader worldview can help us be even more inclusive inside of our organizations.
Are you sure about that?
And while that understanding requires work, the benefit to ourselves and to others is exponential.
Yeah, no, understanding what she was talking about does require work. It requires my mental and emotional labor. Are you going to compensate me for my time on that? Oh, Jesus.
From there, we transition to the topic of access to opportunity.
Okay.
In organizations that strive for excellence, it's easy to get caught up in ideas of expertise and experience that show up in one particular way, in one particular form.
Well, if we're talking about expertise, usually that does encompass one particular way and one particular form, because it's expertise. But okay.
For generations, many industries and institutions have only been open to some of us, and the way has been blocked for many others.
Okay, and what laws are in place to prevent that now? And what laws are you flirting with breaking in the stuff that you've been putting out there in this presentation?
Part of grappling with the privilege we each have is recognizing places where that privilege gave us access to opportunity that others simply didn't have.
Privilege or talent? Privilege or skill? Privilege or experience? Is there a difference? If not, what are you talking about?
We must recognize that there were seen and unseen barriers for many.
Such as?
And our privilege may have acted as a key.
May have.
Then we must take accountability for dismantling those barriers.
What does that look like? How do I take accountability? What barriers are you talking about?
Instead of expecting others to overcome them. The fifth learning today is that removing barriers to opportunity isn't about lowering the bar. It is about unlocking the door for those who don't have the key.
It's not about lowering the bar. By valuing aesthetics over skill, it's not about lowering the bar, about filtering for ideology versus work experience. No. Okay. All right. Tell me what unlocking the door for those that don't have the key looks like. Instead of them having to attain their own key, whatever that means, they just open the door for them. See, if someone doesn't have a key to the door, presumably there's a reason for that. If I'm opening up the door for someone who doesn't have a key, well, okay, it's your analogy. You live with it.
Charlotte McLean in Chapo, Global Disability Advisor for the World Bank Group, shines a light on how organizational and behavioral barriers can compound the experiences of exclusion for people with disabilities.
Okay, and well, then my question ahead of time will be, how does the Americans with Disabilities Act and other subsequent and residual policies and procedures that businesses have taken on over the last, say, 20 years, how do they collectively not address whatever you're complaining about?
She explores how microaggressions and stigma in the workplace can manifest and be experienced, and how we can all work to change them.
I just want to start off by saying we have to remember that experiences are very context specific. So my experience as a woman of color with a disability is very different from a cis white male with a disability or a rural woman with a disability who may not have an education.
Okay, if you say so. You must know the quality of someone else's life on the basis of what they look like. Go on.
And then, of course, our experiences are further nuanced by the types of disabilities that we have. But let me offer a couple of examples of how people are excluded in the workplace.
Okay. Examples? I'm all ears.
So one, I'll start off with structural barriers, and those could be physical or digital facilities, which may emerge as early as in the hiring process itself and may continue throughout the employment life cycle.
May. And what are you talking about? What is a physical or digital barrier?
And these may be structural barriers that exclude persons with disabilities.
Okay. An example such as?
We know that companies often fail to consider the accessibility impacts of their hiring programs, including the emerging automated AI assistants to speed up the process.
What? Why do I bother asking anymore? Why do I bother asking? When they say they're going to give me some examples, why do I bother to expect that I'll actually be provided some?
Of hiring.
Uh-huh.
Then, of course, another way is organizational culture and attitudinal barriers that may exclude persons with disabilities.
Like?
And this might look like employees with disabilities being overlooked because of extremely paternalistic and ableist behavior, or perceived to be part of a particular type of stereotype and not able to address particular aspects of work.
You mean a stereotype like a white cis male with a disability that you already assume to know can't possibly understand your experience as a female black lady with a disability? Like that kind of stereotypes? Oh, okay. All right. Well, can you give me an example? You don't have to use names, but in the course of your professional expertise, experience, and so on, you must have dozens, if not hundreds, of active examples you could bring up that wouldn't violate anybody's privacy or call out a particular company. But like, this happened to this person who had this disability, and the company did this and it was wrong. And so it was cited to them that it was wrong, and this was the correction they made, and then everything was good. How about that? Is that so hard of a thing for these experts to do, to bring up an actual active example from their own expertise and experience to illustrate what the hell they are talking about? Right, you guys that have been with me for a while now, every time that I look at one of these things, we see the same thing, and it's never the same people, right? I mean, I look at subjects across the board with, panels from all over the place. It is a rare day where I come across the same speaker twice on one of these things. And yet every single time, but the times where they do give us active examples, I remember they're burned into my memory. It's only happened like twice. Right? There was the lady talking about diversity in the workplace, and she talked about how they try to give people who have had criminal records a second chance because a lot of those kinds of people get overlooked by employers. She didn't talk about race. She didn't talk about identity. She talked about life experience and giving somebody a chance. And then there was the guy who was talking about neurodiverse employees in his intelligence operation and how they brought a value to the workplace based on their abilities. Remember that? See, I can remember those things. Those stand out because they are unique. It is so unfortunately special when you hear someone talking about their area of expertise and actually providing active examples. It is so frustrating, and it is so interesting how common this is.
And what's clear here is that these behaviors are rooted in hidden biases of employers, and they're very influential. Research tells us that supervisors' attitudes can make or break the employee's experience of inclusion in the workplace. And then lastly, I'll just say that there's also a social side to this. Our engagement in the workplace goes beyond just our desks. So we need to think about the connections that we make in the workplace, in the cafeteria, over coffee, or at the water filter.
So I need to walk around on eggshells around everybody in the workplace on the off chance that something I might say or do will make them feel bad. Right? Or that I might be accused of such, even if I had absolutely no intention, thought, or idea in my head to do so. That's what microaggressions are. Maybe you don't know that.
Or in team building exercises, and continuously ask ourselves the question, are these spaces and fora accessible of all persons with disabilities?
What are some of the lesser known issues, and I'm thinking particularly around the issues of stigma and of stereotypes that show up in the workplace?
Oh, I don't know, like a cis white male with a disability experiences life 100% differently than me, who's a black woman with a disability. That kind of stereotype.
For people who have disabilities.
We know that everyone holds unconscious beliefs about various social and identity groups.
Or absolutely conscious beliefs that they're willing to bolt out there without any hesitation. I mean, it's one or the other.
And particularly to groups that we do not.
Demographics. Demographics. They are not a club. Stop calling it groups when you're talking about demographics.
Belong to. And these biases influence how we organize society, how we categorize people into groups, and often how we assign value to those groups.
Yeah, just like you did at the top of your presentation here. Are you listening to yourself? Do you see the flaws in your own personal philosophy and how they conflict with what you're telling other people? Have you ever been called out for it? I would love to see what happens if you are.
So acknowledging this is really, in my mind, the first step in confronting disability stigma. We know that conscious bias is almost always the root cause of overt discrimination, while unconscious bias shows up in forms of microaggressions, behavior that infantilizes staff with disabilities. We see subtle but often offensive comments like, "Oh, what you do is so challenging. I'm so amazed by how you manage."
You can't be impressed by someone who's had to overcome hardship. That's being, you take that as condescension automatically. Okay, interesting. I've seen several TEDx talks out there with people on a stage that possess some obvious or stated disability of some kind, and what they had to do to move past it and still function in the world, and actually show as an example of someone who can get past those obstacles and those stigmas and move onward and still be a functional member of society and be an employee and be a parent and be whatever. Oh, but to congratulate someone on that's bad. Oh, okay. Thank you, Ms. Tickletrunk. She pronounced mind reading incorrectly just then. Yes, didn't she, though? Didn't she? Someone compliments you on your achievement of overcoming a barrier to be a successful individual. You don't want to hear that. Okay. All right. We'll never bring it up. We'll never make it an issue. And consequently, you will never make it an issue as well, right? I mean, it would be an interesting world if we all just sort of like accepted each other on the basis of who we are and looked past all the other things that didn't matter to that point. So recognizing someone's disability, you don't want that to happen. Okay.
Jokes, actions that may be unintentional, but hurt the employee with a disability and unconsciously reinforce stereotypes.
Lady, I don't know what to tell you. What do you suggest be done to solve this? What is your solution? You who have already categorized people as being of value one way or the other on the basis of their aesthetics, what do you suggest be done?
Or it could be that employees with disabilities are made to feel grateful or special that they have a job. And commonly we see that employees with disabilities are often pigeonholed into certain types of jobs. So for example, a desk job because you have a mobility disability.
Why? Okay. What physical labor position would you put someone with a mobility disability into then? That's your example. What would you suggest be done in the alternative?
And then I think it's worth looking at the leadership of industry. And we really don't see many persons with disabilities on boards. We really see very little disability representation at that level.
Okay, so you want people on the boards of directors and presumably in positions of supervisory roles, you want them selected first and foremost because they possess a disability. You want representation. So we should screen people for jobs and positions on the basis of whether or not they possess a disability. You want to think about that one for another second or three?
And so we have to think about the issues around low expectation of success of employees with disabilities. And this can lead to the redlining of positions, the lack of promotions of staff with disabilities.
Oh, but you want to have the green lining of positions for people with disabilities in order to increase representation, setting aside whether or not they're qualified for it otherwise. You want someone with a mobility disability doing something involving physical labor. Are you listening to yourself right now? You got headphones on, but I don't think you're hearing anything.
Not offering them management positions or suite positions.
We must get beyond the illusion that ensuring equal access in any way lessens the quality of talent we hire or the leaders we develop.
It all depends on whether or not you're lowering the bar of expectation and quality to do so. If you're following the law and you are not hiring people or dismissing people on the basis of factors that have nothing to do with their work experience, skill, or ability, then you're probably in good shape. That's not what I'm hearing from your own experts, however. I'm hearing some suggestions in the exact opposite.
Charlotte calls on us to understand that our organizations excel and individuals thrive when everyone has access to opportunity. Microsoft has been on this journey for some time, and we know that examining how this might be true in our own companies is an important place to start. Thanks again for joining me today. We hope you check out the full videos from these great thought leaders and many more at aka.ms/inclusion journey.
Okay, well, there you go. A little longer than I had anticipated, but as far as my real-time broadcast. But man, there's a lot to say there. There's a lot to unpack. Unpack. My words are failing me. Perhaps I have a disability that needs to be registered. I don't know if I can take a desk job, though. We'll see. Anyway, I'll take a minute here to scroll up, and when I'm not looking at... oh, we had another bot. Why does this person keep showing up? Why is it... I mean, are there just like endless accounts with that same name, and they just keep popping in? Because we've hidden, we've flagged, we've marked all of those bots every time they show up. Anyway, Keeberdam, speaking of which, there was a guy with Down syndrome who was recently fired for reasons after working at a fast food place for over 20 years. Okay. For reasons. Okay. Beachy Cogito! Stereotypes exist for a reason. They always have. Therefore, are survival heuristic assessments. Yeah, there's some things you just can't do away with. If you see someone walk into a room and they are wearing tattered clothing and they smell really bad and so on and so forth, there are certain assessments and judgments you're going to make about that person just as a matter of reflex. But in fact, it could be the king of the realm in disguise. I mean, these things are possible, but they're not usual. We are pattern-seeking mammals, as it were. Let's see. Who else has something to say here? Oh, and thank you, Keeverdam, as soon as it pops up on StreamYard, because I can see it in the one, but not the other. Thank you so much. I retracted and reposted the message for no reason. Retracted and reposted the message. I don't have context for what you're talking. Are you talking about the bot? I must have missed something. Oh, was that? I see what happened. Okay, so StreamYard registers a comment on its window, and it's there even if it's been retracted from the YouTube chat window. So that's what I was responding to. I see. I apologize. That was my mistake. Well, it's mistake of he's fired for no reason. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you, Kiverdam, and thank you for your generosity. You didn't need to. I appreciate it very much, but you don't have to super chat anything that you know what I mean. I really am appreciative of you guys' generosity, but I try to cover as many people as I can. Lexi Mads, fun fact about Google: if you have a Gmail address, you own all permutations of that name with a period and capital and lowercase letters. You can make as many accounts as you want with one email. Oh, I did not know that. Lexi Mads, I think maybe you're the one person of this entire broadcast where I learned something from I didn't know when I began. Thank you, Lexi Mads. Appreciate it. Nellie Daniels, that bot keeps showing up in Monk streams after several different names he blocks, and they just keep up. Yeah, it's an endless cycle, I guess. And maybe Lexi has cracked the code. Mr. Ticketron, StreamYard is just a copy of YouTube's history. Scribe Light, when things are deleted by us, they stay in StreamYard. Yeah. Yep. That's what I'm learning now. Didn't really click until then. Let's see. Anybody else? A guy in his room. We all know how not evil Bill Gates is. So this makes sense. Yeah, Bill Gates, who attempted to acquire a Nobel Peace Prize or a Nobel Prize of some sort by networking through Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not making that up. That is an absolute true story. Bill Gates sought to acquire and be nominated or be awarded a Nobel Prize for something. And in order to do this, he networked through Jeffrey Epstein for the correct individuals that might lead him to that goal. It's quite the story. You don't hear about it much anymore, but it was out there for a couple of weeks back in the day. So anyway, guys, there you go. That's Microsoft and their 5 rounds of experts telling us about how diversity, equity, and inclusion should or could work in the workplace. What did we learn? That Microsoft has absolutely no idea what they're talking about, and they're furthering nonsense for the sake of looking good. It's all for virtue signaling. And the chief diversity officer of Microsoft doesn't really do anything. And if anything, is skirting the edge of federal law and what they're doing as far as hiring and promotion policies within their own company. And they're highlighting quote-unquote experts who, at least in the examples they provided, they selected these portions of those broadcasts for their own presentation. These are the highlights they want us to see of the experts. And what did each highlight give us? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You get no red snapper, Weaver. Anyway, I'm going to call it there. If you have other thoughts on this broadcast or diversity, equity, and inclusion in general, please leave a comment. As you leave the channel for the day, please leave a like on the video. I'd appreciate that. And if you're not already subscribed, do subscribe. I appreciate that as well. Also, whether it's me, whether it's anybody, if there's a content creator that you like and you like their stuff and you want people to know that you like their stuff, let people know, especially on social media and on Twitter in particular. If you share their stuff, be sure to tag them in the tweet where you're sharing it, because then they'll know. And I'll tell you what, I can say from my own experience, I appreciate it when you do, because then I have the opportunity to thank you personally, which I try to do as often as I can. So please do. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can find me here next Thursday, conceivably, because next week I may or may not, once again, have jury duty. It all depends. I will find out Tuesday afternoon if I have to be somewhere Wednesday and Thursday for other things. So fingers crossed, Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for another edition of TED Excellence. We'll take a look at another off-brand TED Talk for enjoyment and education. I call it Enjoyation, I think. But with that, everyone, I hope you have a good rest of your Sunday. I hope you have a good rest of your weekend, a good week ahead of you. I hope you are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.